This is OFN NFL Preview for Week 17. All the games are on Sunday. The playoffs are next week, but we have a lot to talk about, a lot of games to cover, and that's a good thing. An extra playoff team in both conferences will make things a little exciting. Try to update you the best that we can, even though we're airing this show middle of the week on a Wednesday. There still might be a lot of activity as far as players who will not play on Sunday, so definitely keep an eye on that for sure. Matter of fact, I just saw Dalvin Cook is out for Minnesota, so we're going to hear a lot of these types of deals between now and Sunday. You'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. And the best way to do that as well is to check not only what we do here on the Arledge Football Network, but what Mark Lawrence does at playbook.com, which is why you want to get his daily emails. Is that not right, Mark?
That is correct, Greg. That's our daily coffee club, where every day I'll put in your inbox, 6 a.m. sharp, everything that's going on in the world of sports, and my opinion about all that. Check it out at playbook.com.
All right. So I tell you what, let's get right to it. And we're going to start with your team, your old-time team, the Cleveland Browns, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as we talk about this game, the viewers can see highlights. This is 2002. This is the last time the Cleveland Browns were in the postseason. And you just, even though it's, and you remember the two quarterbacks in that game, Mark?
I do not know. Who were they?
Tommy Maddox.
Oh, boy. I would have never remembered that.
And Kelly Holcomb.
And I would have never remembered that.
So this is 2002. And even though it's Tommy Maddox and Kelly Holcomb, if you watch this game and watch the end of the game, the second half, and I mean, Pittsburgh trailed by 12 points with 4 minutes to go. It was an exciting game. It was muddy on the field. It's the Browns. It's the Steelers. There's a comeback. This is like classic football. This is why getting Cleveland back into the playoffs is a good thing. No question. And I'm sure Cleveland would like nothing better than to get into the playoffs by beating that team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they are now a 10-point favorite because Ben Roethlisberger will not play. And you get the feeling other players will also be opting out sometime soon.
Either opting out or Mike Tomlin electing to sit them. If he's going to sit Ben Roethlisberger, you would think it would only be practical that he would sit other starters. They wouldn't want to give just Ben the rest and have everybody else work overtime. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Pittsburgh announce other players sitting, and this number might even continue to grow. So you talk about Cleveland being a double-digit favorite. They've only been that 3 times since they came back as an expansion team in 1999. They won all 3 football games, and they covered the spread in 2 of them. So this is a pretty good roll for them. But one thing that I may allude to, if I may here, is that this is going to be a telling game for Baker Mayfield, not just because he laid an egg last week against the New York Jets, but because he has never won or covered the spread in his NFL career against 750 or better opponents. He's gone up against 7 of them, and he's 0-7 straight up and against the spread.
Even though this is a game, he's not facing a team that represents really that number.
That is exactly what my butt was. Exactly. That was my butt. Okay.
I jumped on the butt.
There you go.
Uh-oh. I don't know. Wait, I don't know. Let's rewind that. Let me take that out.
Okay. But exactly. My main concern in this football game is this, and I don't know if you read our newsletter this week or not, but I went off on a long diatribe against what happened to the Cleveland Browns last week against the New York Jets, and in being forced to play that football game on 24 hours notice with 6 starters out, because the National Football League is a greed factory. All they care about is the money. They don't care about the players. They could talk all they want about Black Lives Matter, and they could talk all about domestic violence, but they're showing their true hand during this COVID football season. They could have very easily have scheduled a week 18 during this pandemic year and used that for the emergency week to take care of matters of like the Cleveland Browns went through last week, what the Denver Broncos went through, and the reshuffling of other games having to be played on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but they didn't do it because they're greedy and all they care about is the money. They don't care about the players. The odd thing here, Greg, is had they done just that, and if there were at week 18 next week, they would have cleaned up on the television ratings because that's all that would have been on, and every eye would have been glued to every football game. It would have been more money in the coffer for the NFL, but they didn't think forward enough. And as a result, the Cleveland Browns are put into a position this week because they end up losing that game to the Jets where they have to win this game to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, the Browns, they have, again, we talked historically, it's just not good as far as Pittsburgh is concerned, not just in losing in the playoffs, but they have only won once in the last 11 outings with Pittsburgh. They have a tie in there a few years ago. So Pittsburgh is 9-1-1 in the last 11. And Cleveland has never, ever, ever beaten Pittsburgh when Cleveland's had a winning record. They're 0-5. So that's not good. But again...
But 4-1 against the spread in those games, I might add, but go ahead.
Yeah. Being the favorite, though, we need a win, definitely, if you're a Browns fan, no question. If you don't win, you're not going to cover. And it's not a gimme, though, because, I mean, Mason Rudolph can play a little bit. And it's not like we're going down to, like what Denver had to deal with, a quarterback off the practice squad who have never played before. And we still don't know who is going to be sitting out for Pittsburgh. But like you said, look, I can give Cleveland and Mayfield a pass from what happened last week for sure. There were players that just weren't there. And look, no matter what, next week when we do our playoff preview show, there's going to be a team in the AFC, a good football team, possibly an 11-win football team. It doesn't matter. Even a good 10-win football team, they're not going to make it. And with 7 teams, with the extra team, that's going to be a bummer. But it is special. Look, if it's the Colts or Tennessee or Baltimore, come on. Those teams make the playoffs. Miami, yes, it's been a few years, no question. That would be a team you kind of feel bad for. But this is the team. I mean, they haven't been in the playoffs since 2002. They have got to get their monkey off their backs, especially the way it's all setting up for them, because the players who didn't play last week, a lot of them are going to play this week. There will not be the excuse this week that they had last week.
Well, we've got half of that Tommy Maddox, Kelly Holcomb scenario here in this football game with Mason Rudolph. Okay, Mason Rudolph has only thrown 4 passes this year. He's only started 3 games on the road in his National Football League career. He's won one of them. That was at Cincinnati. Struggled a little bit, I'd say, in both of those other football games. I think what works best in this football game are a few things, Greg. Number one, major revenge for the Cleveland Browns. That beating they took earlier this year will definitely have them focused in this game. And it ties into the fact that this is one of my favorite angles, the National Football League, 500 or better division teams at home in their last game of the season that have revenge from a division loss. Coming off a straight-up favorite loss, they are 16-5 straight up and 18-3 to the spread. That's a pretty strong number supporting Cleveland in this football game. And then on the blind, just National Football League double-digit favorites who lost straight up as a double-digit favorite their previous game are 23-5 straight up and 19-7-2 to the number. I think you're going to get a focused effort from the Cleveland Browns in this football game. 1, because of the revenge. 2, because they're PO'd about what happened last week. And 3, because I think they can take advantage of Ben Roethlisberger not being behind center.
And look, I haven't really gone into it because there's so many different variables regarding the 5, 6, and 7 teams and where they're going to all fit in when this is said and done. But there's a chance Cleveland could play Pittsburgh in the first round next week. Could happen. And here's the thing, too. Cleveland, if they lose, they can still get in if Indianapolis loses, or, because, of course, Indianapolis is the team on the outs right now. So let's say the Colts lose to Jacksonville, which is unlikely. Okay? So let's say Indianapolis does win. They can still get in, Cleveland, if they lose, as long as Tennessee loses and Miami and Baltimore wins. So it's a couple different scenarios. You don't want to go down here, though. You take care of business. You're a double-digit favorite. Take care of business. Do not be scoreboard watching after this game, because if you are, I'm sorry, you don't deserve to be in the postseason. And that's just the bottom line. And I will end it by saying, because you were bringing up the whole COVID thing, and we've talked a little bit about it this year on this show, and I've talked about it on other shows. I don't care what anybody says. And I've already heard people talking about how, oh, you know what? Uh, there's no asterisk for this season. Don't you think the Dodgers they're not thinking about no asterisk? I don't care what these people they're just full of baloney. Okay, there is a huge asterisk on every champion this season. Now the NFL has got the best because of the way things have worked out. Like you said, and maybe because they've been greedy, but it's worked out the best for the NFL. But even the NFL has an asterisk because of what you just talked about. How is it fair to what happened to Cleveland? How is it fair what happened to Denver? How is it fair what happened to Pittsburgh? The way they got screwed a couple of times between Tennessee and was it Baltimore? I forget. That's not fair on Pittsburgh. So there's no home field advantage. It's just big in the NFL, just like any other sport. So you cannot tell me that whoever wins the championship this year, there isn't an asterisk, because there is. And there's a huge asterisk with baseball. The baseball championship is a joke. You want to give him a championship and say it was a nice baseball championship, fine. But it ain't no typical World Series. The Dodgers are not a legitimate World Series champion, no matter what they think. Same thing for hockey, same thing for the NBA. But NFL, a little bit more where I could believe it, but it's still an asterisk.
Well, hockey in the NBA played on neutral fields or neutral sites.
Yes, in bubbles.
Exactly right. So, that is a huge asterisk all unto itself. At least the National Football League had true home fields, albeit with no fans in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that supports the asterisk portion of what it is we're talking about. I still can tip my hat to the National Football League for pulling this off and making this work. And we're going to play 16 games. Each team will, unless something unfortunate happens this weekend. Mm-hmm. And I would be curious if they canceled a game because of a COVID situation and elected not to replay the game, because it would seriously affect anybody who bet NFL season win totals. You have to play all 16 games.
There you go.
Cash that ticket. So there are some people that are holding some bad tickets that are looking for a COVID out, or some people that have good tickets and are hoping that everybody is COVID clean. So, there's a lot focusing on this weekend and what happens in the NFL.
All right. Well, let's go through some of these other key games. Baltimore, a couple of weeks ago, we looked at this, especially Baltimore. They had the miracle win over Cleveland. And then we're able to, they blew out Jacksonville, and they just blew out the Giants, and you're thinking, okay, well, that's it. Baltimore's in. Whoa. All of a sudden, Brandon Allen is playing lights out for the Bengals. And when you get these teams like the Bengals, the Jets, and so forth, these teams that are just not giving up, there's a spark. And all of a sudden, it feels good to win. And then they get another spark. They get another win. And yes, we know Baltimore is better than Cincinnati. We completely get that. But this is not the Cincinnati team that was going to get demolished 3 weeks ago. This team is going to make Baltimore work for it. Not saying Cincinnati is going to beat Baltimore, but Baltimore is going to have to work for it.
Well, they are going to have to work for it, Greg, because although Cincinnati has this record, which is akin to the teams that they've been beating on this 4-game win streak, 3 of them have been sisters of the poor.
Yes.
And you could say Cincinnati might belong in that same house.
And the one win was the miracle.
Yes, on top of it. Right. Yeah. So
against the winning team.
About Cincinnati, but the difference between them and the other 3 teams is Cincinnati is playing their best football of the season.
That's right
now. And you've got Lamar Jackson in his career, okay? He beats up on bad football teams. he's a cripple shooter, okay? And when he goes up against good teams, he really, really struggles. So we're not likely to see that in this football game here, but I believe we will come the playoffs. Everybody's going to be all on this Baltimore bandwagon because they closed out this season in such spectacular fashion, beating the likes of all of these sisters of the poor teams. And suddenly he's going to have to go up against good quality teams. We saw what he did in the playoffs last year, and I think we'll see the same thing come the playoffs this year if Baltimore makes it.
Yeah, I think this is a dangerous game. Allen, in his last two starts, and you're watching highlights of that right now, has completed 76% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 294 yards per game, and most importantly, he has not been sacked in his last 2 games. No sacks, no interceptions the last 2 games. He'll get sacked in the game against Baltimore because he's definitely stepping up in defensive competition, no question. But this has been the thing that killed the Bengals all season was their weak offensive line. It's what got Burrow hurt, but something's working and they're not turning it over. They're not getting sacked. Again, it's Baltimore. It's different. They've covered 5 out of 8 against Baltimore. That did not occur earlier this season when they lost 27-3 to Baltimore on October 11th. And Baltimore, we know that they need to clinch to get in. If they lose, they need either Cleveland or Indianapolis to lose. And that is a little unlikely. So, because those are big favorites. So if Baltimore wants to get in, they better not choke against Cincinnati or come down to the competition or allow Cincinnati to go into the second half feeling like, hey, you know what? We've won 2 straight. We're in this game. We can do this. And then put all the pressure on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens.
You might want to note also that Cincinnati has played really, really well in their final home game of the season. 12 of the last 13 years, they've won the game 8 years in a row. So they feel good about going out in style. Do the Cincinnati Bengals? So, like you say, Baltimore has got to bring their A game here if they want to hold any chances at all of playing in the postseason.
Yeah, I haven't decided what I want to do with the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game yet. I'm leaning towards Cleveland, but I hate giving all those points to a team that just with all the pressure on them. But I do like Cincinnati getting 13 against Baltimore. That's a big number. I like that one. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that if you'd have followed those line moves early on during the week, you could have got down at Cleveland -6.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you liked them as a handicap, okay? And then you would have been in a real fortuitous spot when the Roethlisberger announcement came, and you could have ended up spreading the game. So, there's some people out there that are hoping this number keeps getting driven higher and higher because they will end up trying to middle this football game.
Okay, now Miami and Buffalo. And another situation that we've talked about the last week or two, and it's here. What does Buffalo do? Well, Vegas is getting the feeling that Buffalo at some point will rest some of their starters because they're only a 1-point favorite. And that line can change dramatically any minute now between now and game time based on any other decisions or leaks or anything like that. Because with Beasley getting hurt against the Patriots, that's like a signal right there. Hey, this is what's going to happen. If you play your guys, is it this important? And listening to McDermott, and he was talking about doing what was best for his team. He was like code wording it, and he wasn't giving anything away. But when you say that, what that means to me is I got to rest these guys. That's best for the team. It's not best for the team to go out there and play for nothing. I mean, I guess you can, say, well, he was saying that because what's best for the team is to keep their mojo going. All right, I guess it's possible. There's a percentage in that possibility. I think the opposite. And he did it last year against the Jets. You could say maybe it backfired. They didn't play well or they didn't beat Houston. Okay, whatever. Maybe that's the reason he decides to start his guys this week because it didn't work last year. But I just got to believe he's going to rest some of these guys, whether he plays them for a quarter, a half, or not at all, or a series like he did with Josh Allen last year. I don't see them playing the whole game. So this is I think if Miami blows this, it's going to be Tua turning the ball over, things like that. But he's going to have a short leash. And I'm going to talk with Alan Poupart on the our Miami Weekly show, All Dolphins Talk, tomorrow to get his thoughts on it. But I just get the feeling Tua is going to get a much shorter leash on Sunday.
Well, if Tua turns the ball over, he'll be turning the ball over to Ryan Fitzpatrick, is what he'll be doing.
That's right.
He'll go
And
to
they'll
the
be
bull.
doing it more than likely just once.
Yes, and he'll go there real quick this time. Uh, but you got to also give Brian Flores his due. He's done a great job in turning this football program around. Remember, they started 0-7 last year.
Yep.
They've won 15-9 since then, 16-7-1 to the spread. It's my belief that Brian Flores, Sean McDermott, and Kevin Stefanski are the three coaches in the NFL Coach of the Year running right now. And a lot of that could be determined on what happens this weekend. If Flores wins this game and Miami makes the playoffs, it pushes him forward. If Cleveland wins this football game and they make the playoffs, it pushes them forward. If Buffalo wins and gains the number 2 seed, it could be him. So there's a lot.
Who do you have?
I'm sorry?
Who would you have right now, today?
Well, right now, today, I would have Kevin Stefanski.
So would I.
Yes. Okay. Because he's done.
But he has to get to the playoffs. I agree.
But I'm going to pick him apart a little bit here. Okay. Last week,
yep,
when he had 0 starting wide receivers, all 4 of them out, he's got the best running back tandem in the National Football League, and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and he throws the ball 53 times. Are you kidding me? 53
and he threw the ball 9 of his first 11 plays. It wasn't like, hey, we ran the ball early, they stacked the line of scrimmage, so we had to then open it up. No. You ran the ball twice in the first 11 plays of the game.
Well, I understand what he did, though. I got to say this, Greg, because every coach puts a game plan in place to do what the other coach doesn't expect, okay? And I'm sure the Jets were expecting a 1-2 punch from Chubb and Hunt, and they didn't get that. So he thought he was going to out-coach Adam Gase, okay, which is not hard to do. But it ended up backfiring on him in that case. So that was a bad move by Kevin Stefanski, which knocked him back into this 3-way race as far as I'm concerned. So, that was a faux pas that he made, and we'll see whether or not he makes up for it this week or not.
And I think when you're – he's a rookie head coach. He'll learn from it. I think when you are playing teams that are not on your level, you don't screw around. You just say, hey, we're going to come after you with our best, and if you can stop us, then we'll try to think of a different strategy. But you've got to prove to us that you could stop us because you're not on our level. You shouldn't be trying to play mind games with one-win football teams. That's a rookie head coach mistake.
And also, what was Baker Mayfield running the ball on 4th down for and a sneak when you've got the 2 best running backs in the league behind him?
Sure.
You got to put the ball in their hands. But it's all hindsight 2020. We can speculate till the cows come home. And there's a lot of reasons Cleveland lost a football game that they should have won. But it does indeed open the door for the Miami Dolphins and Indianapolis Colts.
And interesting because get this, the last time a team did not make the playoffs with a 10-win record, you know what that team was?
You're going to tell me the Cleveland Browns?
No.
All right. I was going to say the Green Bay Packers, but who is it?
The New York Jets.
Oh, there you go.
And the quarterback was Ryan Fitzpatrick. And the loss was in Buffalo.
Oh, boy.
The final game of the regular season. You win, you're in. You lose, you're out. So wouldn't it be something if Ryan Fitzpatrick has to come into the game with a 10-win team in Buffalo to try against his former team? Because this is when he's retired, eventually, we're all going to still, he's not going to get to the Hall of Fame. If he did, he'd be wearing a Bills uniform. That's what we remember. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's been on 100 teams, but we remember him as a Buffalo Bill more than anything. And that's the team that he wasn't able to beat the first time with a 10-win team. We'll see if he can do it again if he gets into the game, which obviously Miami doesn't want to see Ryan Fitzpatrick because that means Tua is doing a good job. And I think it's the right decision because it's all about Tua. Yes, it would be great if he can get to the postseason, but what exactly are you saying about Tua, the future quarterback of your team, if you don't play him, Fitzpatrick goes in and wins the game? And then what? You're going to say, well, you're not going to then turn around and start Tua in the playoffs, and you're just going to keep Ryan Fitzpatrick, keep starting him, and you're just not giving the confidence that you need to your young quarterback who you hope is going to be around for the next 15 years. So I can play because again, all you have to do is give him a chance, just like he's doing. If he screws up, you take him out.
Well, as you mentioned here, if Fitzpatrick gets that chance, it'll be like Yogi Berra said, it's deja vu all over again.
Yep.
That's what it would be for him. And as far as Tua goes, Brian Flores is doing a masterful job with him. He's bringing him along real well. He's
Yes.
got a really great mentor in Fitzpatrick. He's using him to the T in helping and develop him, and he'll start him this football game unquestionably. The question is, how long will he go with him in this contest?
Do you think Buffalo will be favored on Sunday?
No, I think word is going to come out that Buffalo is indeed going to be intending on resting regulars. It'll all start obviously with Josh Allen, and if Josh Allen rests, so too will others. There's no reason, like I mentioned about the Roethlisberger situation, of resting him and not the other starters. It would be the same case for Buffalo as well. So we can look for that situation to be the same with Buffalo as it is with Pittsburgh, if indeed Allen does not play.
Yeah, I like Miami right now at getting the point in that one. And that's something I said a few weeks ago. And I'm sticking with the Dolphins. And yeah, they had to get one pretty fortunate the way it occurred last week, but they're in it. And that's the reason why I like them, was because I just looked at them and I said, there's just something about this team this season. They're just not a regular team fighting for a playoff berth. There's something going on there. And I can't see this team with everything they've done to win games and the way in which they've won games. It's a classic storybook season. Doesn't mean they have to win a lot in the postseason. Just a nice little classic storybook season that I believe is going to end with them in the postseason.
You know what they've also done this year, Greg, is they've won football games with a defense that's really been injured, banged up all season long. So that's another tribute to Brian Flores, being the defensive guy that he is, keeping this defense intact and allowing the offense to end up leading them in the attack that way. So again, another kudo for Brian Flores this football season.
Okay, now the AFC South. If Tennessee beats Houston, they win the South. If they do not win, and let's say the Colts win and the Colts win the South, then Tennessee would need Miami or Baltimore to lose in order to get the wild card. So there's still a chance. That's a chance again, just like Cleveland, it's a chance you don't want to have to take because you're a 7-point favorite at Houston. But out of the opponents that these teams are facing, this is the toughest one. There is just no doubt about it. Because you got Deshaun Watson right now. There's no indication that he's not playing. And I would be very surprised if he didn't play. The only way he doesn't play is if there would be an injury. Something where they say, we can't take a chance. You're a little banged up here. You got to sit. Until we hear that, Deshaun Watson's playing. You got the J.J. Watt deal with him coming out. Talked about that with Ryan Dunleavy a couple of days ago. How is that, work with the players, an inspirational kind of speech there. Throw in the fact that it's a division rival who beat Houston in overtime earlier this year. So Houston really made a game of it. And Tennessee, I throw away the Sunday game against the Packers because of the snow. I'm sorry, but there's just no way that score is the same score and if there's no snow. You had a team from Nashville I don't even know if any of those players have seen snow very often. And Green Bay, it's a snow team. So there's just no way that it meant nothing. But now Tennessee's in a pressure situation, and they have to go to Houston to take on a team that has shown with Deshaun Watson that they can steal games against good football teams. It's a 7-point spread. I don't know if Houston's going to pull it out. I could see it going either way. I could see, especially if Tennessee gets off to a good start. That's the thing that has to happen. I think if Tennessee can take a more than one score lead into halftime, I think game over. But if Houston's hanging around or if Houston's got the lead at halftime, Tennessee's in for a long, long football game. And that's not where they want to be because, like we said at the open, a really good football team is not going to make it to the postseason.
What you've got here in Tennessee and Houston in this matchup, Greg, is two teams, one that's hot and the other that's not. And I'm going to go with the team that's hot coming off the loss. That's being obviously the Tennessee Titans in this football game. Look at Houston and what they've done this year against winning opponents. They've been in 7 games. They've lost all 7, okay? Yep. I don't know why they wake up in this game here other than to play spoiler. And I don't know if they have the ability to play spoiler. I think it was a wake-up call for Tennessee in that loss. Sometimes teams need a loss like that before they can regain their momentum and get back into gear for the playoffs.
Yep.
Like Pittsburgh needed that win last week, obviously, to regain their momentum.
No question.
Of which, on another sidebar note, it also goes to scratching my head about why Mike Tomlin would rest Ben Roethlisberger when all that team has done is played one good half
right
in the second half of the season.
Actually, 19 minutes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
19 minutes, okay? And now he wants to break that momentum. It's mind-boggling to me. But anyway, in Houston, you've got a team here that has really struggled against good teams, and you've got a good team here coming off a loss. Houston's also been a no-show in last home games of the season. They're 2-6 to the number the last 8 years. I think Tennessee wins the game comfortably.
Okay, now Indianapolis, 14-point favorite against Jacksonville. We just talked about the Pittsburgh game. The defense just let the Colts down. It was, you talk about mind-boggling. What took place in that game was mind-boggling because the Colts, they had the playoffs sewn. It was over. The way Steelers offense had been going for weeks. The way the Colts defense had been playing all season. It's it. It's over. And they let the Steelers in the game. It was one play, the big bomb, and it opened the floodgates, and the Colts defense did not handle that well at all. Now, how do they react to taking on a Jacksonville team who's been, believe it or not, like their division nemesis? And this is why in week 1, I took Jacksonville as my upset play because Jacksonville beat the Colts as a 7-point dog week 1. That is their 7th win against the Colts in their last 11. They have covered 9. They're 9-1-1 in those 11 against the spread. Jacksonville is against the Colts. But the Colts, if they win and Tennessee loses, the Colts win the South. Or if they win and Tennessee wins, they need a loss by either Miami, Cleveland, or Baltimore. So there's still a shot, a legitimate shot for Baltimore. Take care of business. I mean, for the Colts, take care of business against a bad team, and then one of those 3 teams loses. Not sure that's going to happen. Maybe the Colts lost their opportunity, but this is still a tricky game because this is a team that just has their number.
Well, they do play them close. There's no question about that. The question here is Jacksonville already had their win, and their win being Trevor Lawrence.
Well, that one too. Yeah, isn't that funny? They've had one win the whole year, and this is the team that they beat.
Exactly. So that's ironic, isn't it, in the season opener? So another reason for the Colts to come and play here, you look at Jacksonville in their final road game of the season the last 14 years, they're still looking for a win, okay? I don't see an upset happening here. I think it's highly unlikely. But what happened to the Colts last week in Pittsburgh was not a total surprise, given the fact that their defense has really disappeared. They're MIA the second half of the football season for the Colts. They were the number 1 ranked defense at the midway point. Now they're down to, I believe, barely in the top 10. So they're going to have to somehow step up and play some semblance of defense in this football game. But I think they're going to catch a Jacksonville team that's totally disinterested. The Colts will have all their attention. They're going to need this football win today, but then they got to get a loss from Baltimore, Cleveland, Miami, or Tennessee. Will it happen? It remains to be seen. They'll get the win. You don't see Baltimore losing. You probably don't see Tennessee losing, but you could see Cleveland or Miami dumping here. So we may end up seeing the Colts in the playoffs if the cards fall their way.
Now the NFC, and we start with really the one that could determine a lot for that wild card spot, Arizona and the Rams. The winner's in. It's that simple. Right now, the Rams are a 1-point favorite against Arizona. If Arizona loses, they're done. That's it. They can't do anything. There's no other breaks they can get. So Arizona has to win. Now, if LA loses, they could still get in if the Packers beat the Bears. So that and that could very well happen because the Packers need the number 1 seed. So the Rams are in a pretty good, they're a much better shape than Arizona is coming in. I don't think that has anything to do with who's playing harder. Look, no Jared Goff is a big deal, no question. This is interesting because how often do we talk about the backup quarterback and the team rallying around the backup quarterback in his first start? Well, they're going to have to rally big time because this is it. This is the start of the season for the backup quarterback, John Wolford. And I'll say this. out of quarterbacks that nobody has heard of, and we hear about these second string, third string guys. Who are these guys? They're no good. They come out, they look like crap. I don't think that's going to happen with John Wolford. I'm not saying John Wolford's going to light him up, but I think John Wolford is a guy that has been waiting for his moment for his entire pro career. As you know, he had a very good college career at Wake Forest. He was right at the time that Dave Clawson was turning that program around. Wolford was the guy. He was the quarterback that started that process. Then he goes and plays for that Alliance Football League. All right, it's a crappy league, but hey, he was like the best quarterback in the crappy league. That's good. I remember when the Jets had him. The Jets, they were talking about, hey, we like this guy. Because, why are you keeping this guy here? An extra quarterback? Well, we like him. They just couldn't hold on to him, and he's been bouncing around. He is going to get his chance now. And I just think that one thing people are forgetting is that the LA Rams are a defense-first football team. That's the strength of their football team. The defense, not Jared Goff. They're winning despite Jared Goff. So unless Wolford plays bad, a couple turnovers here and there, I actually, considering the Rams own Arizona, they beat him 7 straight by a 33-12 margin. I'm taking the Rams.
Well, 7 wins in a row by 21 points is very, very impressive, an average of 21 points by the Rams. And as you mentioned, we love to play teams who use a backup quarterback when the starter goes out for the very first time. And Wolford fits that role to a T. I don't believe Sean McVay is going to let the LA Rams lose this football game behind John Wolford. I think John Wolford is going to be there not to lose the football game and let the other players do what it is they do. And as you mentioned, circling it around the defense. One ugly number for the Rams in this game, and it's the fact that if you take a look at what they do against 500 or better teams that are off back-to-back losses, they're just 2-13 straight up with only 1 point spread cover. This is not a role that they've been able to handle in the past. It remains to be seen whether they will be able to or not. We know Kyler Murray's a terrific underdog, 11-4-1 to the spread. I'll be curious as to how this game closes out to the line here. Yep. Right now, the Rams are a 1 point favorite. We'll find out the sentiment about John Wolford in Las Vegas here. If Arizona goes to the favorite, there'll be a lot of people that won't like their chances. I can say this. I will probably like the dog in the game. Who will that be? We'll wait and see who the dog in that game is. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, because it's not. But whatever happens, it's not going to get to the level where Kyler Murray really excels, and that's as a 3-point dog.
Exactly.
Or more. So We're not going to get to that point. But I agree. There's no question Arizona with Murray had been better as dogs. I mean, because they take the pressure off. And we saw last week what happened when they were in a pressure situation. They're supposed to beat a 49er team that can't beat anybody. They're still ravaged with injuries. And Murray had no touchdown passes and 1 pick. And he led the team in rushing. I mean, that's just this is the formula for winning football games. So, but this is different. Pressure's off a little bit. I think especially after the loss, and if they are the dog or it's even a pick'em game, I think there are a lot of people, even without Goff, might be kind of feeling that, well, Arizona, maybe I give up on them. Cliff Kingsbury, I never believed in that guy anyway. So maybe that's exactly what Arizona needs. Here's something interesting that I found out. In the 3 years, because again, LA came into this season, sweep, sweep, and sweep. Okay. In those 3 years, get this, LA scored in 2017. They scored 65 points against Arizona in their 2 games. 2018, 65 points. Last year, 65 points.
That's pretty good research. I'm going to tell you that. Go ahead. What do they need here?
They have to score 27 points to hit the 65-point mark for a 4th straight year against Arizona.
Well, if they do just that and they make the playoffs, you'll be reading about that, and credit to Greg DePalma in next week's playbook.
All right, I'll root for that. By the way, Cam Akers is a big deal too, because with Henderson out, Akers, if he doesn't play, it's Malcolm Brown. And Brown's okay. He's probably one of the better number 3 running backs in the league. But Akers, what did we talk about last week? You had to rush Cam Akers into the game against a winless Jet team instead of just, don't worry, we're playing the Jets. We'll see you next week. And now it may be coming back to haunt the Rams in this one. So we'll see how it goes. But again, I'm going to go ahead and take the Rams in this. All right. Now, also, as far as the Packers, this is the game that is going to decide the number one seed in the NFC. If the Packers win, they get it. If they lose, they're going to need a little help. The Bears, if they win, they're in the playoffs. If they lose, they need the Rams to win. So they could still get in if they lose to the Packers, but they need a Ram win. The Bears, 3-0, straight up and against the spread in their last 3 games. But the Packers have beaten the Bears 8 out of 9. They've covered 6 out of 9. They beat the Bears by 16 on November 29th. There's an 8-point favorite on Sunday Night Football. And I did also some research on Khalil Mack, and I talked about that with Ryan on Monday. I can't believe how non-existent Khalil Mack has been for the Bears this season. He hasn't done, for a guy who is supposed to be a superstar elite defender, he has been invisible. It's almost like there's an injury. There's something going on that they're not telling us. They'll let us know in the offseason. But Khalil Mack averages 3 tackles a game this season. That's it. It's just, and I'm surprised nobody's really talked about that, but that's not the reason. And Mitch Trubisky is not the reason they're winning either. The Bears, Trubisky has been an upgrade with Foles, no question. It's the running game. It's the offensive line has gotten better. We talked about bringing in those 2 Notre Dame guys. David Montgomery is finally getting holes to run through. He's playing the best of his career. The defense is still a very good defense. Can they knock off the Packers, though, who need the win to take the week off?
Well, as you mentioned here, the Bears need to win and they're in, or a Rams loss, which could happen. So, Chicago might not be dead and buried even after this football game. Mitch Trubisky, give him his due. He's 6-2 this year, starting games for the Bears a whole lot better than Nick Foles ever was or thought about being. And in fact, if you take a look at NFL teams playing their last game of the season against a division opponent that are on a 3-game straight up and point spread win streak, a la the Chicago Bears, they are 17-4 straight up in these football games. So good numbers come to support the Chicago in the football contest. Green Bay maintains that number 1 seed with the win, or they need a Seattle loss, which is not completely out of the picture. And you've also got Green Bay just 1-5 straight up and 0-6 to the spread in the regular series against Chicago when they're off a double-digit win, and Chicago has a winning record. I think Chicago comes with everything they've got here. Like Cincinnati, they're playing their best ball of the season as well. Chicago opened up 3-0. They went 5-1 their first 6 football games, and they lost 6 games in a row. I think they would be only the 3rd team in the National Football League history to make the playoffs with a 6-game losing streak within their schedule, and I think they're keen on doing just that. It's going to be, I think, an attractive football game for Chicago here. I like them plus the points as the home underdog, and I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay ends up not resting some regulars here as well. I understand their importance for the number 1 seed, and I think they'll play Aaron Rodgers for as long as they feel like they have a lead, but 4th quarter, we might see Aaron Rodgers wearing the hoodie on the sidelines.
And here's a really good trend, which I was able to get here from Playbook Magazine. You can see here. And you can order this at playbook.com. And hopefully next year you'll have the same deals with Books A Million and Barnes & Nobles. And that's where you can pick up the 2021 edition. The Bears have covered 11 straight games versus 500 or greater division opponents who are coming off a double-digit straight-up win. So how about that for icing on top?
I like the icing. That's whipped cream on the cake for the Chicago Bears. I'm sure the Bears faithful will be glad to hear that.
Okay, now New Orleans, number 2 seed at Carolina, 6-point favorite. And, look, I know it's not 100%, but it seems like every time I have gone with Carolina this season as a dog, with Teddy Bridgewater especially, they cover. And I'm just, that's all for me, because they've been and this is also something that I think it's an important tip, sort of like with Stefanski. Don't overthink things. So if you got a good thing going with a specific team during that season, there's always going to be a team. For me, it's usually a few teams in the NFL, a few teams in college football that are good for me and bad for me. And it's never the same team consecutive seasons. And when you are riding those types of teams, like the Panthers, and hey, I keep checking wins when they're a dog. I don't care if they don't win, and maybe you throw extra on the money line. They didn't come through there. That's okay. You check the list off as far as the dog, and they covered, and that's the important thing. The Panthers have covered 8 out of 9 as a dog this year. Bridgewater is now 24-5 in his career as a dog. That's all for me, considering what I've done this year taking Carolina. And they've also covered 5 out of 6 against the Saints, which is very weird. We talk about winning and covering and how those odds are always weighed on. If you win, you're going to cover. Well, not in this series, because the Saints have beaten Carolina 5 out of 6, and Carolina's covered 5 of those 6.
Yep, you got to like Carolina. They fit the epitome of the National Football League dog that you have to like each and every week when they dress up in that role, and especially as long as Teddy Bridgewater is behind center. He brings these undeniable numbers, and he just keeps knocking them down week after week after week. I don't know what changes in this particular football game. You've got two division teams that know each other quite well. New Orleans edged Carolina 27-24 earlier in the season. I can see this football game playing down to just the same way in this contest here. I'm with you. I'm with Teddy Bridgewater, and I'll be taking the points.
And here's a good one, too, that if you want to take the Saints, I'll throw your way, because I do like the Saints. The Saints are a good team, it's a good trend team, or at least have been this season. If we talk about some good trends for the Saints this season, they usually come through for us. This one is one of those weird ones, so it's not like a regular one, but it is out there. The Saints have covered 10 straight away after scoring 40 or more points when they take on a team coming off a straight-up win. So
I'll counter that. I'll see you, and I'll raise you.
Good. I want you to raise me since I'm taking the Panthers.
Carolina Panthers as an underdog when coming off an underdog win. 6-0 straight up and against the spread.
Actually, that was 6-2.
6-2. Yeah, I put 6-0 in the newsletter. You found it, and I corrected it. It is 6-2. I'll take 6-2. Not quite the raise that I wanted to do, but my hand is in the game.
Still a very good number.
Yes, it is
for the Panthers. Okay, and then finally in this scenario with the top teams in the NFC, Seattle's a 5-point favorite against San Francisco. They've won 5 out of 6. They're 12-2 in their last 14 against San Francisco, and that includes a 10-point win on November 1st as a 1-point favorite. And what's working for Seattle is what I've been hoping would finally work for them as my preseason NFC champion, and that is their defense. They have held their last 5 opponents to 17 points or less. I don't care who they're playing, because early in the season, it didn't matter who they were playing, and they were getting run over by everybody. Cam Newton had his best game of the season against Seattle early on in the season, and we know what kind of year Cam's had. But this is different. Dunlap's in. Adams is healthy, and so forth. So they've really got that going for him. You got the San Francisco. I think they got that win last week. When you're struggling, you got backups, and you finally go out, and Beathard, that backup, first game, comes in.
There you go.
Rallies, 3 touchdown passes. They ran. Wilson had 182 yards rushing. Seattle's done a good job rush defense during the stretch as well. I think if San Francisco wins this game, it's going to be 16-13, that kind of thing. I don't see San Francisco scoring a whole lot the way Seattle's defense has been playing. But Russell Wilson has got to get going, because the running game is back, but there's something off with Russell. Sort of like, not as much as Patrick Mahomes is off, but he's so dialed in right now in his career that he could still put up really big numbers. Russell Wilson's off, and it's like he's putting up like barely over 100 yards and 1 touchdown and an interception here. And it's just, he's all over the place. He's not in his right mind right now. And he's got maybe 1 big game left in order to springboard himself into the postseason, because the Seattle Seahawks will not win a Super Bowl unless Russell Wilson is playing his best football.
As he was to start the season, as he's not right now. So which Russell Wilson are we looking for in this football game? As you mentioned, he could use this as a springboard to move forward into the playoffs with, but you don't suddenly just turn the switch on and say, go.
Nope.
And you don't do it against a division rival who plays some pretty good defense themselves.
Yep.
And we've also got in the newsletter, as we called out, San Francisco had a real down year this year. And it wasn't surprising because they are the defending Super Bowl loser. And those Super Bowl losers really struggle the following year as San Francisco played according to Hoyle this year. But those Super Bowl defending losers have been great in their final game of the season. They're 28-10 straight up, including 11-3 to the spread when they're not favored in these football games. So the defending Super Bowl loser doesn't want to go out with a loss. They come as hard as they possibly can, and I see Frisco coming hard in this football game as well. I think this game goes down to who scores last, and with that, I'll have to take the points with the 49ers.
Okay, and then finally, the NFC East. The crazy NFC East is going to come to a close, thank goodness. And it's really about which team has been able to get hot at the right time. Because the Redskins had a 3-game winning streak. The Giants had a 4-game winning streak. Now the Cowboys have a 3-game winning streak, but the Cowboys have it now when it matters. Doesn't mean, in my opinion, they're any better with the roster than the other two teams. They just happen to be getting hot at the right time. And that's why actually I like them against the Giants. I'm not crazy about them being a 3-point road favorite against a team that's pretty similar to them. I don't like that. But I do like the fact that they own the Giants. They just do. They've won 7 straight against the Giants. They've covered 6 out of 7. Dak Prescott injured for the year in the game that the Cowboys won over the Giants this season, and also a game in which they actually did not cover. So that's the 6-1 I talked about. But they still found a way to beat the Giants with Dak Prescott getting hurt in the game. So they just own the Giants. I do not like the way Daniel Jones is playing right now. The Giants are also 0-8 against the spread in their last 8 at home when they take on an opponent off a straight-up dog win like the Dallas Cowboys are. One team is 3-0 straight-up ATS last 3. The other team is 0-3 straight-up against the spread last 3. And the good team that's won 3 straight owns the other team. That's why I'm taking the Cowboys minus the 3.
Well, you had me, Greg, at I don't like Dallas laying points on the road.
And then after that, everything was all Cowboys.
Yes, it was. Then I tuned out, okay? But what we've got here is a New York Giant football team that's also in a sound slumber as well. This football team right now does not even deserve to be talked about as a possible playoff team. But they've averaged 12 points a game their last 4 games since their bye week. 12 points a game. The good news for them is they got Daniel Jones back for this football contest. That should help. And there's no question that Dallas does have the hot hand coming in here. The New York Giants do not. You have to look at the hot hand when it comes to a chance to make the playoffs. For that reason, I'm not going to play the New York Giants. I would want to fade Dallas, but I can't do it with the New York Giants being in the condition that they're in. So this game is a total pass for me.
Well, Jason Garrett is going to have to try, and the Clapper is going to have to try and devise some sort of scheme to go up against his former team. But look, at least Daniel Jones, look, he had a bad game, obviously wasn't ready, then didn't play, then came back, looked a little bit better. Now he needs to take a little bit, obviously, better step again. It could happen. I mean, again, it could happen. And if they can find a way to beat the Cowboys, then the Redskins, if they lose to Philadelphia, all of a sudden the Giants sneak into the playoffs. But yes, that could happen. Look, with Washington, I'm throwing everything out except this. Alex Smith. Look, Alex Smith is the story. We know he's been the story. They wouldn't even be in this spot right now if Alex Smith hadn't gotten hurt. But he got hurt. And now I think Alex Smith is definitely playing. Matter of fact, I think if last week was week 17, Alex Smith would have played. But they rolled the dice. He wasn't 100% healthy. I can understand him taking extra precautions with him as well. Now he's going to play, no question. And the Washington defense, though, is the other reason. They're the best unit out of the three teams as well. I mean, the defense has been fantastic this season. Alex Smith with a really good defense against the Philadelphia Eagle team that has dropped 6 out of 7. And I'm taking Washington.
Well, I think this ties a little bit into the Dallas Cowboys laying points on the road. Now we've got Washington laying points on the road. Not a good, comfortable role, if you will, for the Washington football team doing just that.
And good for the Eagles, because that's what you want the Eagles as a home dog. You don't want the Eagles giving points.
Unquestionably, where they're going to come loose as a goose in this football game in this particular role. What you've also got here is the Eagles, when they are the home dog and they're coming off a loss, which they coughed up 34 or more points, or 8-1 to the spread. But what I really like here is this is a Sunday night football game. This will be the primetime football game. And Sunday night home teams in their last home game of the season, when they're hosting a division opponent that's coming off a loss, these home teams are 8-0 straight up and 7-1 against the spread. I think Philadelphia plays spoiler in this football game. Their season will be made if they knock Washington out of the playoffs here. It won't be made by their win-loss record, but it'll be made by an upset in this contest here. And I think Jalen Hurts, now he's going to be under the prime time lights, is going to step up big in this football game. I'm going to play Philadelphia plus the points to deny Washington their chance at a playoff spot. And here's one other sidebar note. I'm going to throw this in there real quick, Greg. You've got the Tampa Bay Bucks, right now the number 5 seed in the NFC.
Oh,
East.
yeah.
Okay, they're South. NFC. And if they win their game, they'll remain there as the number 5 seed. Who will they play the opening round? They'll go visit an NFC East opponent, okay? What more could you ask for?
Absolutely.
For an opening round opponent for Tom Brady to have to go play an NFC East opponent. So that could also pave the way for a big win by the Tampa Bay Bucks if they look to do just that.
And because look, if that wasn't the case, if the Bucks were in the same situation as, say, the Bills and the Steelers, this seed or that seed, we're not going to get a week off. Who are we going to play? There's no question in my mind that you're going to see a lot of, because they got some veterans on that football team. You're going to see Brady out. You're going to see Gronk out. You're going to see other guys out. But NFC East is our opponent. If we win this game, absolutely, that's going to be the main reason that they're not only going to get guys that are going to play, but they're going to play hard to win this football game, because that almost guarantees a week 1 playoff win.
What's that song that I hear in the background in the locker room of the Tampa Bay Bucks? John Fogerty, "Put Me In, Coach."
Oh, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play this game.
They want to play this game because they want to play the NFC East. That's exactly what the reason will be. So, again, I think you look for a focused effort by the Bucks in their game against Atlanta.
All right. Sounds good. Mark, what's going on at playbook.com? Because before you start getting into college basketball, the NBA in 2021, you still have a lot to work on, because the bowls are all done, right? You have the newsletters are available. If anybody wants to check them out, they can go to playbook.com, order the bowl newsletters. But the only thing left after this will be the championship game in college football. That's it, right?
That's right. It'll be our midweek alert playbook newsletter, and it's our late week newsletter, which we rolled into the College Bowl report this year. So you can still get the College Bowl report in the midweek in time for all of the New Year's Day games. And next week, the midweek alert reverts to the NFL playoffs. So we'll be covering the playoffs in the Playbook midweek alert starting next week, all available online at playbook.com.
All right, Mark, next week we preview the playoffs. We'll also take a look at our preseason predictions and our win totals and how we worked. I haven't looked at them. So we'll find out how we did. We'll go over that. That should be a lot of fun. But yes, we'll not only have our playoff predictions, but we will also talk about futures odds and things of that nature, who we would pick as far as that's concerned. Lastly, do you have a prediction for the college football playoffs? Or are you keeping that under wraps?
Well, I don't know. It's hard to project because you got 4 real good football teams playing this weekend. One, a rematch from last year's semifinal game when Clemson beat Ohio State. I think these football games are going to be closer than the odds maker anticipates. And if they are, we'll see what happens here. Let me also go out by saying this. Alabama has gone through a football season where they've coasted, and every good football team faces a tough game where it's a scare game. Alabama hasn't had that yet. So don't be surprised if Notre Dame puts a scare into Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the 20 points, when I first saw it, I was like, wait a second. I know Notre Dame has had some clunkers recently, but they still have also had some wins. You know, they've won some bowl games against good football teams. It's not like they're 0-5 in the last 5 bowl games. You know, they've won some, they've lost some. Yeah, they had a bad game here or there against top competition, but I don't think anybody would doubt that this is his best team. And okay, they lost to Clemson, but they beat Clemson. So you can't sweep Clemson. It's not going to happen. So yeah, I agree. I just think Alabama's defense, not very good. Florida just scored whenever they wanted to. Notre Dame is not Florida offensively, but defensively, much better. Yes, 20 points blew my mind how big that was. That has to be something mentally to the kids at Notre Dame. Wow, 20-point dogs. Everybody thinks we're trash. So I think that's going to come into play. And here's an interesting thing, too. Ohio State has played Clemson 3 times all time, all in bowl games. And Clemson has beaten them all 3 straight up and against the spread.
Yeah, Clemson sort of has their number here. It remains to be seen whether or not they can do it 2 consecutive years in a row. Remember, with Ryan, Ohio State is 22-1 straight up. The only loss was to Clemson, as we just talked about last year.
Ryan Day, you mean?
Ryan Day, yes.
Okay.
And also, one other number to go out on in that Alabama game, we talked about them being a 20-point dog. In my database, college bowl dogs that are getting 16 or more points just on the blind, doesn't matter who you are or what the situation is, a bowl dog of 16 or more, they are 11-3 against the spread since 1980. So I would think of the 14 bowl dogs that were getting 16 or more, Notre Dame might be the best of those teams that took 16 or more. So just keep that thought in mind when this game plays this weekend.
And also, SEC bowl teams are 0-6 against the spread in their last 6 as favorites of more than 13 points. And, of course, Alabama beat up on Notre Dame in the 2013 BCS championship game, which, again, I think is another reason why, or a key reason why people Notre Dame in the playoffs, and they've gotten beat up by Clemson that one time and Alabama. But that was 7 years ago. I don't think that should. Look, if Notre Dame gets beat up again and can't cover 20 points, then I am officially never touching them again. I don't care if they get 40 points against Clemson or any of these teams. This has got to be the year that Notre Dame shows up. They don't have to win. They just have to show up. And we'll see if they can do that. When it's all said and done, though, I'm actually going to take Clemson to win the national championship. I think a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, who gets another chance in the playoffs, I don't know if he'll go 1-2. I think he's going to end up 2-1. And I think he's going to be the difference in them winning the national championship. But it should be interesting because, as you said in the open, these are 4 really good football teams, and anything can happen.
I think there'll be one heck of a weekend of college football playoff to be found this weekend, and we'll look forward to the championship game when it does come about. Right.
And we'll talk about that next week as well. Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the football.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Greg. Be safe, stay well, and Happy New Year.